In the cockpit of your emotions. I used to work for a guy who was training to become a small plane pilot. And we used to travel for about 4.5 hours together. And he loved driving his truck. And then he asked me to, as a passenger, quiz him on his latest exams that he had to do in order to qualify as a small plane pilot. And he handed me this thick book, and it had all sorts of terminology and stuff in it, and I had to go through it. And it's amazing how this works. When you are actually having to quiz someone, when you become more of the cell, become the teacher role than the learner, you learn actually more than the person who's learning himself. I've always seen it. When you start teaching something, you learn more. Anyways, and so I had to go through this book, and I had to kind of think about it and think about how I can organize the questions and get them ready for the guy. And so we had several trips over a period of 3 months, and I think I learned more about flying small planes than he did in that period. But never mind, he got his license in the end, and it was happy and it was all good. But then recently, when COVID struck, I was reminded about this again, because what happened was people needed coaching, especially in areas like being mentally tough and mastering their emotions. They were going through an emotional roller coaster. And I did a lot of coaching, and I love sort of the visual aspects of things and to have analogies. So then I started looking at how can I explain to them how to work with their emotions out of their intellectual brains in sort of a curious way, so that that'll help them to master their emotions. And so I looked at it, and you're familiar with the line work, staying above the line. So we would do those types of things. We would do that first so that they understand what the line is and how to work with the line and to be living above the line. But then once it came the emotional side of things, I thought it may be interesting to look at the cockpit of your emotions. Let's look at the emotions, and let's pretend that the dashboard of the plane is kind of where your emotions live, and there are gauges on it. The gauges, you read those things, and maybe the cockpit is like your body. You feel your body and you feel the emotions, but the gauges tell you what it is. And it started all with the gas gauge. And when you think about this, when a pilot flies and he sees his gas is running low or her gas is running low, they will always make a plan to go land, because they know if they keep going, it's going to be a disaster. They're either going to hit a mountain, they're going to run out of fuel, they're going to have to land somewhere away from an airfield. So they always take care of themselves. Yet we as leaders, when we get involved and we get busy and we get threatened and there are lots of things happening, we forget about ourselves. We forget about filling our own gas tanks so that we can keep going. And we forget to go land, take a break, whatever that means, get good sleep, to refill our tanks so that we are strong again to be able to go forward. So that's the first thing. When you see the gas tank in the plane, that person, the pilot, will stop. And as a leader, when you start feeling like your tank is running on empty, or it's getting depleted, you get that feeling in your body of tiredness, of no creativity activity anymore, that type of thing. When that starts happening, it's time for you to say, okay, enough is enough. That's the gas tank. But then there are several other instruments, and I like the one that's called the artificial horizon, or the attitude gauge. And you've probably seen it. It shows a horizontal line, and then it shows the little plane sitting above the line. And then when you this banks, and you can see what happens and the whole thing, and it gives you that relative thing, and you're above the line or you're dipping below the line. And to me, that is exactly where you need to understand yourself, and it's like the artificial horizon, where you need to constantly be aware of where am I in relation to the line. If I think of things in the past, do I think of that as learning experiences and positive experiences and that I can learn from, or do I see it as negative experiences and it was terrible and I sit in the terribleness of it? And if I look at the future, do I see opportunity and planning, or do I see sort of fear and desperation and worry about what the future is going to look like, and planning for failure, not for success. So where am I? I'm in relation to the line. And then where I'm flying now, where I am right now, as a pilot, you're flying right now, you got to be above the line, you got to be there, and you have to focus, focus, focus. And that's the place where focus is, where happiness lives, where you are present and aware, and where you are being positive and productive. So to me, that's the area on the artificial horizon that you see. Another few things that we do have in the plane, another instrument, is the airspeed. How fast are you going? Are you going too fast? Are you going too slow? Are you leaving people behind in your wake? Are you maybe too slow and people overtake you and your team is not being challenged enough? Or are you challenging them too much? There's also the compass. Do you have your purpose? Do you have your mission? Do you know where you're going? Do you know your direction? Is your heading there? So all of those things to me are indicators of where we're going. And like flying a plane, those emotions, we need to be able to handle them as we go forward. And so as you go forward, a few hints on your emotions. When you're in this intellectual zone where you are curious about your emotions, you're learning about your emotions, that's a place where you need to understand that your emotions are yours and you own them. You decide what your emotions are doing with them. You're responsible for your own emotions, no one else's. If you are deciding that you're going to be happy and that you're going to be good despite difficult circumstances, you can do it. If you decide on certain things, it takes you forward because you create your emotions based on your own interpretations. If you interpret something as, oh, that's an opportunity, then it'll be positive and it'll take you forward. But if you look at that same thing as a threat that's going to kill you, it's going to get you, that's a different emotion and it'll sit a different place. And then when working with your emotions, there are a couple of things. The first thing is that you have to be curious about every emotion, especially negative emotions. If you're getting frustrated, why are you getting frustrated? If you're getting angry, what's happening with you? Where does it sit in your body? And if you can be in that curiosity mindset, like reading the gauges in the plane, you're just reading the gauge and seeing what the plane is going to do so that you can act accordingly. And if you think your body, you are the plane, and you're reading these things, that'll help you go forward. If you feel inadequate, why am I feeling so inadequate? What has triggered this in me? And once you've got that curiosity, you can embrace that negative emotion and you can move on from it. It will empower you to be positive or take positive action. But, you can also choose to be positive. When you're flying the plane, you can take a heading that takes you into sunny skies. If you see there's a storm clouds on the horizon, you can choose to go certain places. So if you can choose emotions like happiness, like determination, like confidence, like gratitude, if you live in those places, you are starting to master your emotions. So to me, that is important in the cockpit of your emotions. So when you are out there and you're in the midst of everything, pretend that you are flying the small plane of your own body and your own emotions. The gauges are telling you where you're going. Those emotions are like the readings of the gauges. And by acting appropriately to each gauge, to each emotion, what it tells you, when you're curious about it, you can lift yourself up and you can soar like an eagle.